Baltimore Ravens at the Tampa Bay Bucs. The Ravens favored by 3.5 here in Tampa Bay. Monday Night Football at 8:15. They'll also be Chargers Cardinals starting at 9. Again, the old school Monday Night Football start time.
The last time that Lamar Jackson played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he won, but it was an interesting game because he only had 10 scrambling yards. They did a pretty good job of bottling him up, keeping him in the pocket. The running wasn't overwhelming either, like his design runs. He had a relatively low output game generally, like he had 238 passing yards, something like that, and was pretty.
The rest of the running backs run all over the Bucs, though.
Yeah, but like my point being, they kept Lamar Jackson to this weird game where, not weird game, but an unusually styled game where he was just quite efficient from the pocket, like non-explosive necessarily, but had one turnover-worthy play, not an overwhelming passing day, just sort of an efficient chain-moving performance.
This was 2022, right?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to reference this was the game where people caught on to the fact that Devin White wasn't actually that great.
Yeah.
Because he kept, getting blocked 20 yards down the field in this game, in that game. So, yeah, I mean, that's what makes the Ravens so dangerous, and they're probably even more dangerous now than they were then.
Yeah. Gus Edwards, so Lamar Jackson had 43 rushing yards in the game. Gus Edwards had 65, Justice Hill had 28, Kenyon Drake had 62, Devin Duvernay had 33 for a total of 231 for the Baltimore Ravens at 7 yards per clip.
Yes, that's what I remember is they could run at will, and even in a game when Lamar doesn't necessarily have to do it, he creates the numbers advantage, right? He creates those blocking advantages. That's why Vita is healthy, right? Every time I say a player's name at this point in the season, I'm like, is he healthy?
Look at this, by the way.
Vita Vea's got to have a huge game.
You with your diva-like requests, your writers for this show.
Oh, the records are there.
Ben Allen is in here on the fly adding records to the graphics so that your dumbass can remember what everybody's record is.
Love you, Ben. That's awesome. Now I can just read the screen.
Right. They don't have to remember anything. It's all there for you.
I just hope Ben's not the guy like 10 years from now that's like, man, working with Steve was the worst.
Right. He's remembering all this. It's going in the notebook.
Such a diva. He would make demands of me and never thank me, And Janko, they're just sitting there writing, keeping notes. Tyler's got a whole notepad from the last few years working with him, He's got notebooks full.
Mm-hmm.
See? Look at that. Love you too. You're pretty handy just throwing text up there. We can just now, next one, can I get closed captioning for everything I say? Can you just type everything that I say? Everything I say up there. Oh, this is fun. If you didn't catch our Wednesday show, I know we know what the numbers say, right? Most of our listeners listen to Monday and Thursday, the reviews and the previews. If you're missing the Wednesday show, you are missing some unbelievable fun because we know not as many people listen on Wednesday, but you're missing a lot of fun on Wednesday. It's when we have the most fun. We got to be all business here on Monday and Thursday. Just talk about the football games. We have a lot of fun on the Wednesday show. So we just deviated, had a little fun here.
Nice.
Vita Vea versus Tyler Linderbaum is a matchup I want to see. Like, this feels like one of the games where Vita, again, he's healthy, right? has to dominate up front for the Bucs. Because Vita's the type of guy that can offset the numbers advantage, right? The numbers advantage being Lamar Jackson cancels out a defender. So Vita Vea has to cancel out an offensive player by destroying blocks, blowing up the middle, slowing down Derrick Henry when he's running it, and then, making Lamar Jackson make, more difficult throws, essentially, taking the run game away from Baltimore.
Yeah, and they need him to play in a different way than he's been playing for a while. Like, he hasn't been acting as the sort of, the almost the player you're describing, the two-gapping, run-stuffing, space plugging defensive tackle. His biggest impact has actually been coming on pass rushes, just like collapsing the pocket, which is almost the last thing you want to do against Lamar Jackson, right? Collapse the pocket, get him moving, and he's in space, running. We don't have anybody that can stop that. You actually want him to have his biggest impact in the run game and play in a different style. He's capable of it, but it is an unusual dynamic where you're taking that guy and almost switching what you're asking him to do.
On the other side of the ball, Tampa Bay's offense, we just saw last week, Sean Tucker with his monster game. Bucky Irving's been running the ball really well. Rashad White coulda, woulda, shoulda be back here this week. They're talking about the three-headed monster in the backfield. Tough to ignore what Tucker did. Last year, undrafted free agent in 2023, was outstanding against the Saints. So the Bucs getting the run game going, I think, is important because they've been pretty effective throwing the ball, spreading the ball around to Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, getting the backs and tight ends involved in the pass game. Baker's generally played pretty well this season, but the run game adds that extra balance. That's why they had almost 600 yards of offense against the Saints. Baltimore, though, old school Baltimore, very effective against the run, one of the best success rates against, number 6 EPA per play against. They have the opportunity to slow things down. They're just very fundamentally sound. They just slowed down Washington's very good run game last week. I know they didn't have Brian Robinson last week, but Baltimore just sits there, blows up blocks, sits in their gap, fundamentally sound, make you earn it in the run game. So I think they're going to they have a chance to make Tampa Bay one-dimensional as well. And then, comes down to Baker and those pass catchers making plays.
The Ravens are fun because they've maintained this sort of very unusually constructed defense that I think a lot of teams are starting to think about swinging back towards. They seem to have either intuitively or been ahead of the curve analytics-wise and numbers-wise, understood all the way along the value of what you would see as quote-unquote one-dimensional run-stuffing nose tackles, right? They have always maintained multiple big-bodied guys on the line of scrimmage. Brandon Williams, then Michael Pierce twice. He went away and came back. Travis Jones, who they drafted. They've always maintained at least a couple of those guys that can plug gaps up front, force you to do something other than run up the middle, and then that's where they can exploit you with pass rushers or with, actual sort of penetrating defensive tackles like Matabike. It's an interesting defense that they've consistently sort of kept as a style. And
the other one thing I'll add to that, Travis Jones playing really well this year, the nose tackle that you mentioned, or defensive tackle that you mentioned. He was a third-round pick in 2022, pick 76. That was the year Jordan Davis went 13th overall to Philadelphia. Everybody's like, do you need this guy? Do you need this guy to build around your defense? Well, Travis Jones playing as well, if not better, than Jordan Davis, getting him about 60 picks later in the draft. The Ravens, the pick after that, got Kyle Hamilton. So, again, you just look at the team-building effort of Baltimore, and it is generally on point. That's nothing against the Eagles. I'm just saying
but it's a good example.
They got him in the third, and he's a very effective player, especially in today's NFL.
And it's a good example of how, it's tough, right? I don't even know. There are definitely times where chasing the freaky athlete is important. But this is a good example of why it doesn't always work out, right? College-wise, now different level of competition, but college performance, you can definitely argue Travis Jones was just as good a player, if not better, than Jordan Davis. But Davis is the guy that at 345 pounds ran like a 4.8 or whatever. And you're like, that's otherworldly freaky, right? You don't find that ever. So we take that guy in the first round because if it all comes together, we've got a singularly unique player that nobody else can replicate. Or you take a guy who's at least as good, if not better, on the field, who probably doesn't have that utterly freaky upside, but we get him in the third round, and the chances are he's as good, if not a better player. It's just, this is why drafting is hard, because sometimes you look at genius, because you went after the athlete, and that guy hit the high end of his range of outcomes, and now you have a player that nobody else can replicate. Or he doesn't get any better, he's the same guy, and the guy that you could have gotten several rounds later is just as good, and you look like an idiot.
Yeah. And we're not saying you look like an idiot, but I say good job by the Ravens finding Travis Jones in round 3.
Yeah.
All right, let's make our picks. Also, really quick, Baltimore's pass defense hasn't been as good this year. Some fun matchups. Brandon Stevens has some size going up against Mike Evans. Nate Wiggins lacks size if he gets matched up with Mike Evans, but he fits better against Godwin. There's some interesting matchups on the back end there for Baltimore.
Meanwhile, Baker is leading the league in touchdowns by several and is generally cooking people right now.
Yeah. So, if Tampa Bay has to throw the ball, I think they have the ability to move the ball through the air once again. So I think it could be a Baker-heavy game again for the Bucs. Baltimore favored by 3.5 here. Where are you going?
Going with the Baltimore Ravens. I have more confidence. I think that they are in that groove right now where they look like the best team in the NFL, and they tend to do that every now and again. I just have more confidence in that remaining than Tampa Bay, who still feels a little hit or miss, inconsistent, could show up, might not show up. This is the type of game where they might not show up, and then Baltimore just wins.
I was going to say something similar. Baltimore's in that groove. Could see them getting up 2 or 3 scores. Tampa Bay working their way back into it. We've seen that game flow for both of these teams over the last couple of years. Give me the Ravens to cover the 3.5. Harry will take the underdog Bucs on Monday Night Football. Game 1 of your doubleheader.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.